Okay, you can do this.
I know. Carvana makes it so convenient to sell your car. It's just hard to let go. My car and I have been through so much together.
But look, you already have a great offer from Carvana. That was fast.
Well, I know my license plate and VIN by heart, and those questions were easy.
You're almost there. Now to just accept the offer and schedule a pickup or drop-off.
How'd you do it? How are you so strong in letting go of your car?
Well, I already made up my mind, and Carvana's so easy.
Yeah, true. And sold.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your own online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. Shopify.com/promo.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. It's questions day, Kieran. I've got a numbers question for you.
Oh,
that comes, it comes from my son, young Ed, and some of his friends. And the numbers question is, how come England's first goal was officially timed at 90 plus 5, but their second goal was officially timed as 91? There's some kind of timey-wimey binary numbers thing going on, Kieran. We need to sort this out.
it is officially extra time starts in the 91st minute. But yeah, I think it's a very valid point, because if that means that your second goal was scored before your first.
Exactly.
So we're getting into Doctor Who territory here.
Yeah, I mean, we had enough things to shout about without shouting about the maths involved.
Okay.
I've never seen a team, Kieran, paper over the cracks and then deliberately take the paper off, make the cracks wider, and then try to put the same paper back over the bigger cracks. It's such a shame we're not a football pod. Also, note to Gareth Southgate, Eberechi says many things. He's not a left back. Just bear that in mind for the next one. I'm sure our listeners have got many more questions about that game, Kieran, but if any of our listeners are in Slovakia, we owe you an apology. I can't say sorry enough for that act of brazen larceny that took place on Sunday. We've got some good questions, Kieran. As ever, I'm chuckling in advance in case I forget to chuckle later. The same people that sold us the dodgy countdown are trying to sell us more ways of getting around the profit and sustainability rules, Kieran.
Yes.
And we'll start with the first one. And the first one is Dale Geraghty. So Dale Geraghty's question is this. As a Stoke City fan, I have been thinking of imaginative ways of FFP allowing the Coates' Wealth Fund to inject the money required to get us back to the Premier League. They said they have the money and they want to invest, but they can't because of FFP. So here's my plan. Could we put millions of advertising boards all around the stadium, or 30,000 individual seat adverts, even an advert on individual bricks around the stadium? An advert could cost £10 a brick, seat or board, so we would meet the fair value criteria. Then anything other individual companies did not want to put their logo on, Bet365 could sponsor, allowing the funds to be injected legitimately into the club. Is he right, says Dale? Also, I mean, let's go further, Ken. Why not have a stadium built of Lego? And that'll give you billions of bricks. You do that. So imagine how grumpy the groundsman would be, though, if he trod on a Lego brick on a pitch. It's Dale's. I mean, it's imaginative. Does it really work?
It's intriguing, and I do like the fact that the mentality of fans is not that we ought to go and buy better players, but we simply ought to just to get around the FFP, find a workaround.
Yeah,
because I've got the details for Stoke City. In the first year after they were relegated, I think it was in 2019, they had the most expensive squad in the Championship, £196 million squad, and they failed to get promoted. In the second season, they had the second most expensive squad, only after Fulham. Fulham had spent a fortune. That then dropped to the third most expensive squad in year 3 and the fifth most expensive squad in year 4. So there has been a huge amount of money invested. as far as the team is concerned. It's just been spent extremely poorly. So we are now in a position where Stoke City no longer have parachute payments, and they do have to try to cut their cloth accordingly. I know that their former chief executive, I think it was Tony something, he said, look, we're richer than God. Why do we need to apply FFP?
Yeah.
And he wanted to scrap it. As far as Dale's suggestion is concerned, I think what the EFL would do as a response is that they would look at the collective value. So although it would be £10 a brick or £100 a brick, or whatever it would be, the EFL would say, well, what's the total value of the prospective sponsorship? What proportion of that is coming from a well-known potteries-based gambling company, for example, and therefore judge accordingly. So we'll wait and see. In my view, the EFL is much more nimble than the Premier League when it comes to dealing with loopholes. But this one could be dealt with. There's nothing to stop Stoke charging £1 million a year for a season ticket, as Chelsea used to do with Abramovich. So you charge them £999 for each of the Coates family, and you bring the kids, and they bring the kids' and so on. So there are workarounds. It does come down to what is the viewpoint of the people in charge. The chances are that if you do come up with a novel scheme, then at the next EFL meeting, there will be a change in the rules voted through. So it is, to a certain extent, it's whack-a-mole as far as the approach to FFP is concerned, or PSR, as we should be calling it. It probably was FFP when Dale wrote the question, because we got such a backlog.
In Mexico, do they call it whack-a-mole? I think it's a really interesting question from Dale. But it does indicate, Kieran, that in the last couple of years, without doubt, fans are much more savvy and much more interested in matters of football finance, that they all seem to think now that a lack of money is always the problem. It's not. It's exactly as you said. It's how the money is used. There's many clubs who've got a lot of money, but they're just not using it right. They're just not managing to find the right manager or the right players or the right blend to get them into the Premier League. So it's not always the lack of money. It seems to be a bit of a comfort blanket for some fans now, isn't it? Well, what can we do? We haven't got the money.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, spending somebody else's money is always quite good fun. And I can understand, you listen to Newcastle fans, their frustrations, Villa fans, I think I think Everton fans were, they've been cheesed off because they did have significant wealth behind them at one point and so on. So the frustration of not being able to indulge, and this is what we're looking for. We're looking for indulgence. The owners want to indulge because they've got spare cash. The fans like to be indulged because we live vicariously off the success or otherwise of our football clubs. And that's where we go. So it's a frustrating issue.
Yeah, our next question, Kieran, is also a sort of workaround in a way, but it's a workaround for young players. It comes from Ashwin Ramamurthy. And Ashwin says, I think banning top division teams from all countries from loaning in players would benefit the game and young players enormously. Any team in the top division of a country should be able to afford players without resorting to loaning them in, or they should play their youth players instead. This would stop hoarding of players and lead to a more even distribution of talent, particularly of youth who are not given opportunities at the top level. They could, of course, be loaned out to lower division teams, but it stops loans such as the ridiculous Ramos loan to PSG. What are your thoughts on this?
I can understand Ashwin's position in relation to this. The loan market is a tricky one. What do you want to do with young talent? You want to give it exposure to competitive football. And we do have the EFL trophy where under-21 teams can play against the first teams of League One and League Two. But that will often be a completely different style of football that you're up against. And you can also get bullied by seasoned pros who know the tricks of the trade. There's a case for saying, well, at least you're getting exposure to those. So that's one viewpoint. There's another viewpoint that you want young talent to, if they're good enough, but they're not quite good enough. So if we take the case of Chelsea, I think about 4 or 5 seasons ago, Chelsea had something like 12 players out on loan at other Premier League clubs. And that gave those players the opportunity to develop. They weren't deemed to be good enough for the Chelsea first team squad, but yeah, Weird one on loan at Brighton and Huddersfield and all of the other. Remember Tammy Abrahams was at Swansea and so on. And it gave those players access to playing at the highest level and playing against the best talent. And remember, they'll only be picked for the first team if they're good enough for the Swansea first team or the Brighton first team, the Huddersfield first team and so on. So there's that. With regards to international transfers, it's often to do with, again, going back to Dale's question, it's often to do with a workaround FFP. Kylian Mbappe was originally on loan at PSG because they couldn't afford to sign him that particular year. And in the case of Gonçalo Ramos that he mentions, the player went on loan with an option to buy. That option was taken up by PSG and he signed for €65 million. It does seem a little bit strange, but a lot of this is a function of FFP. And then there's other issues that are sort of for more established players. We've got Romelu Lukaku. It's not worked out at Chelsea. He spent 1 year in the first team, and then he spent 2 years out on loan. What are the alternatives? Who's going to pay him $300,000 a week? So he either sits in the reserves at Chelsea, or he effectively puts his feet up. It was Winston Bogard who was famous. Yeah. I think was it West Ham?
Chelsea.
Yeah, you can do that, but that's not good. As a professional athlete, you do want to be playing at the highest level, and also you want to be able to represent your country, and you can't do that if you're in the reserves of a particular team. So the loan market works as a workaround for that, and it allows the home club, the host club, to cover some of the wages and also to get a loan fee, normally in the case of a signing which has not worked out.
I suppose any listeners we have in Spain, Kieran, and I know we do have quite a few listeners in Spain, will be thinking, hang on a second, this doesn't apply to us. We've got a 19-year-old on one wing and a 16-year-old on the other. So clearly in some countries, youth is getting the opportunity, isn't it, Kieran? And again, note to Gareth Southgate, neither of them are playing left back. David Peacock. David, you'll be pleased to know this made me chuckle. The first bit of this question is: does Kieran keep a spreadsheet? So that I had to stop then because I was laughing so much. I assumed there was a bit coming up, but it just made me laugh. The idea of what if Kieran keeps a spreadsheet? Does Kieran keep a spreadsheet updated with clubs' rolling headroom with regards to financial fair play, which producer guy does want us to keep referring to as profit and sustainability from now on, but it's so difficult, Kieran, isn't it? So David Peacock, does Kieran keep a spreadsheet updated with clubs' rolling headroom with regards to profit and sustainability? I'd be interested to understand better the background to each club's financial planning for the next season, specifically Middlesbrough, as we seem to be accruing massive continuing losses, and I'm assuming that the FFP headroom must be diminishing every season. I realise that due to the lag for reporting of financial accounts, this will always be backward-looking, but reckon it could add a bit of colour to pub debates about why we signed or sold so-and-so. So the beginning of the question made me chuckle, and the end of the question made me chuckle. It's very funny that he wants this information to add a bit of colour to pub debates. That's very funny. I like the idea. It hadn't occurred to me before, though, this idea of rolling headroom, if you like. I know I'm having trouble with my ears, Kieran. Have I got tinnitus, or is...
No. My granddaughter's here, and she's playing with Ollie the Squeaky Octopus with Finley.
Yeah, I thought I'm pleased to hear that, Kieran, because suddenly I was looking outside and thought Fox has got something outside. Where's the cat? Oh, she's fine. Yeah, so this idea of the rolling headroom, Kieran, is an interesting one, isn't it?
Yes, I do have such a spreadsheet, David. That will not come as the greatest surprise of the summer, I suspect. It contains a lot of estimates because the accounting profits or losses, should we say, for PSR purposes, then have to be adjusted for various add-backs. But what I would say, in the case of Middlesbrough, I've actually got some good news, I think, for David.
Ooh.
And the reason why I say that is in the Championship, you're allowed a 39 million PSR loss over 3 years. Now, Borough made a £57 million of losses over the last 3 seasons, but I reckon they've got a Category 1 academy. So I think I can add back 18 million on that. They've got infrastructure costs of 9, so that's 27. So that takes the 57 million down to 30 million. But the way that it works, and he's right that it is sort of a rolling issue, is that the oldest season drops out. So we're recording on the 1st of July. And of course, we've just had the unusual transfer of a number of youth players that nobody's ever heard of between clubs whom we were concerned about. But what will have happened is that the year ended the 30th of June 2022 is effectively dropping out because we're now in the 24-25 season. And in the case of Borough, that was the season they made their biggest losses. So I think that Borough do have a bit of wiggle room if the owner, Steve Gibson, who's been a very generous benefactor to the club over the years, if the owner wants to put in the money, because there's an assumption amongst all fans is that the £39 million is a target. And I've always argued it's a bit like with a credit card. If I get a new credit card and it gives me a 20,000 limit, it doesn't mean that I need to go and spend £20,000. I don't get a gold star for taking myself up to the limit. The sensible thing to do is to keep that balance at zero. Owners, or some owners, have a different viewpoint, and most fans take the view, and this is one of the many flaws, one of the many reservations I have with the present system of cost control measures, is that the fans get into the mentality of, if you are not right at the limit of PSR, then that's an indication of a lack of ambition by the owner. But the owner might not have the money, or the owner might actually want to run a football club in a sustainable basis. And that was the case with Mike Ashley. And there's a million and one things to criticise Mike Ashley for, but he actually ran Newcastle as a sustainable football club. And as you argued, you put it in the book that it also meant it was extremely frustrating and boring for fans.
Steve Gibson must be the longest serving owner almost in the country now, certainly in the Championship, I'd imagine.
Yeah, he took over the club when it had just gone into administration. I remember seeing on the news, the locked gates at Ayresome Park, and he was local lad, classic local lad made good, who has put an awful lot of money into that club. We're talking well over £200 million.
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. Do you sometimes find yourself comparing your life to other people's? It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you need to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a registered therapist. Once you get started, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge.
With almost 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/price today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/price.
Well, we got a minute. I'm going to buy that truck I've been wanting.
Wait, don't you need weeks to shop for a car?
I don't. Carvana makes it super convenient to find exactly what I want.
Hold up. You're buying a car on your phone? Isn't that more of a laptop thing?
You can shop wherever you want.
I like to do my research, read reviews, compare models. Plus, Carvana has thousands of options. How'd you decide on that truck?
Because I like it.
Oh, that is a great reason.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
Our next question, Kieran, comes from George Ellison Bunce. That's a good name, isn't it? George Ellison Bunce. It's a simple one. George says he's a London-based Carlisle fan, and as we've discussed on the pod before, Carlisle's ownership issues and debt to PurePay hung over the club for years. Do you know much about the new owner, Tom Piatak, and his business involvements? Should we be happy he's now running the club?
In my view, yes. I think the things that they have done to date are very encouraging. So I don't know much about his background apart from he's a US investor. I think he wants to take sort of a family approach to the to the club, which I think is a positive. He's running it via a company called Castle Sports. But the good news is the debt with Pure Pay has been settled. Pure Pay were owed around about £2.5 million, and it'd been hanging over Carlisle United for many, many years. As far as the accounts are concerned, I've always given Carlisle 5 stars in terms of my assessment. I think they've always been very transparent. They've always been very detailed. And if you contrast them with a club like Reading, who just use loophole after loophole to not communicate and to not be upfront with the club, I think that deserves a lot of credit. The club is now effectively debt-free, which is good going forwards. The new owners want to get Carlisle back into the Championship. I remember when Carlisle were in the top division. That was late 70s, early 80s, was it 79, probably 80, 81, something like that.
No, late 70s, I think, yeah, because I remember they beat Chelsea and went top.
That's right. That's right. The good news for Carlisle as far as this season is concerned is that they've got a £1 million bonus. I think this is from the sale of James Trafford from Manchester City to Burnley, so because they had an add-on then. In the case of Jared Branthwaite, who is attracting a lot of attention as far as the transfer market is concerned, I believe Manchester United have put in a substantial offer. It's alleged that Carlisle United have a 15% add-on there. So, if he goes for 50 to 60 million pounds, then they're talking £7-8 million of add-ons coming their way. So I think they're in a strong position financially, and they're one of the clubs which are in a position to move forward with new owners, and that's to be celebrated.
Very good. Tim Fitzgerald as our next question, Kieran, and it's another of those workaround questions, but this looks like a proper accountancy actually could happen workaround. And Tim says, I have an idea, and I wonder if it's workable, and if so, if it might solve some of the risk-taking approaches taken by clubs re FFP, or PSR. With the rules allowing clubs to spread the cost of player purchases over the length of contracts, open brackets, amortisation, close brackets. I think that was meant for me, that bit, amortisation, just to remind me. To reduce losses on the books, but allowing income from player sales to be reported all in one go, this surely encourages risky spend now, worry later behaviour from clubs aiming for promotion, especially in the Championship. What, however, if the same rules had to be applied to profits? As in, what if when you sell a player, you had to record the profit over a similar length of time?
I think this is an intriguing issue from Tim, and there's no reason why that could not be applied. So if you had a player with 3 years left on the contract and you sell him at £30 million profit, spread that over 3 years, it would, I think, lead to a softening of the transfer market, because what we've seen over the course of the last 2 or 3 days is that those clubs who are very much at the PSR limit, or in fact had exceeded the PSR limit, were taking this approach of not necessarily a fire sale, but utilising young men as commodities in order to dig the club out of a hole. Brighton have just had their biggest ever signing, and Newcastle have just had their second highest ever sale of a player for somebody who's never played for Newcastle, who they only signed 12 months ago, immediately loaned out to the Netherlands. That intuitively does seem just a little bit odd. We've seen quite a few, not swaps. The clubs are very, very keen to say, well, we've not been swapping players. It's just an amazing coincidence that a player will go from Leicester to Chelsea and a player will go from Chelsea to Leicester in sort of the same 24 hours. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. So we are seeing some unusual transfers because it allows clubs to book that instant profit. And I'm familiar with the accounting rules. I did my first accounting exam in 1978, and it was always an anomaly then, and it's something which has never been addressed, is that you spread the cost of something over a long period of time, and when you sell it, you take all of the profit immediately. Now, that's not normally, if it's a car or a piece of machinery, that didn't historically used to be an issue because you didn't tend to be making a profit, because if you're selling a 3-year-old car which you'd bought new, the value had fallen. But when it comes to football talent, it's a completely different scenario. So, yeah, I think this will be a fascinating workaround. If I get some spare time, and that is a huge if, I might, and the Baroness is not listening, I might just have a go at the accounts of one club just to see, in the words of Morrissey, what difference will it make?
Kieran, if you get some spare time, take the dog for a walk. Make some squid ceviche. Have some Kieran time. Get yourself in a bath with some candles. It is. I love the look on your face when you said it's an amazing coincidence that these two clubs are selling and buying. I just like the idea that somebody from Chelsea is driving their player up the M1 and looks across to the other lane and sees somebody from Leicester driving their player down to Chelsea. You go, hello, what's going on there? As though they look, seriously, we could have saved ourselves an Uber. That's an amazing coincidence. We've had a good old-fashioned question about one club, Kieran, and now this is a good old-fashioned, old-timey price of football question about another. It comes from Alexander Walton, and Alexander says, how are my club Altrincham doing financially these days?
Well, Alexander, I used to go and
dear.
watch Alty on a regular basis because I used to live in a place called Hale Barnes, which was about 15 minutes walk from Alty. So I used to see them on a regular basis and always a welcoming club. In 22-23, they lost around about £400,000, which is a substantial amount. That was partly due to the fact that staff numbers had significantly increased by around about 20% that year. But I think that's because the owners are trying to develop Alty as an alternative in the South Manchester area for those people that can't afford or become disillusioned with some of the other clubs and the prices being charged. They've got a new chief executive. They've got a new chief financial officer. So it does appear that there is a new broom at the club. And I know somebody that's been involved in terms of trying to develop the club commercially as well. So it's a fresh start. I wish them all the best in what is a tough market, but it's an aspirational area to live in around Alty. You've got the likes of Hale Barnes, Bowden, very, very close. So there is plenty of wealth around Altrincham, and if they can tap into that and build up the fan base a bit further, there's no reasons why they can't go forwards. And I'd also think it will be fantastic to have them in the EFL, although in my view, getting out of the National League is one of the toughest things in football, given that there's so much money in that particular competition.
To save my many friends in the Northwest being cross with me, Kieran, how do I pronounce? Is it Altrincham? Altrincham.
Yeah.
I grew up thinking it had a G in it. Altrincham. Okay. James Harmer has our penultimate question, Kieran, and it's about an issue we mention a lot. It's about sell-on clauses. James Harmer asks an eminently practical question, which is who keeps track of sell-on clauses to make sure they are paid? Because I imagine, as you're quite right to imagine so, James, there are some players that are subject to multiple sell-on clauses and other conditions that would need to be monitored for the extent of a footballer's career.
It is the responsibility of the club secretary to monitor all transactions. Now, it could be that they're working in conjunction with the financial officer, but what will happen is that every time there is a player sale, the contract will be lodged with the Football Association and the individual terms will be lodged as well. So therefore the FA and also the governing body of the competition. So it could be the Premier League or the EFL, or we could be talking about an international body as well. They would get a copy of that contract, because if there is claims of breach of contract, it's absolutely essential that the governing bodies have the appropriate paperwork, which was signed at the appropriate date, to which they can therefore give judgment. So what would happen is that if a sell-on fee was not paid, what you would then have to do is to politely ask the buying club, where's our money? And if they refuse to do that, then you would take that up. And there have been examples for non-payment of ongoing transfer fees where there have been sanctions applied to the clubs. I think Sheffield United may have had one early this year, for example.
So is this the club secretary of the first club that the player played for, or the club secretary of all the clubs that he's played for? Because I imagine down at Reading, they'll be tracking the Michael Elise transfer situation, because if he goes to Bayern Munich, I understand they're in line for a payment of several £1 million. And then, of course, I'm sure there'll be a clause if Elise goes to Bayern and then plays 10 times for France, I'm sure Palace will be getting some extra money as well. So all the club secretaries are keeping tabs of this, presumably, are they?
Yes. So if Palace sell him any money, and also if Palace sell him to Bayern Munich with a sell-on clause, and let's say he goes from Bayern Munich to Real Madrid, then Reading will get 15%, let us say, of any money that Bayern Munich play to Palace. So you can have, it's very much sort of the wrist bone's connected to the elbow bone is connected to the shoulder bone.
Right.
And you can follow through, I'll use that phrase carefully, you can follow through for sort of 2 or 3 iterations with regards to a player sale.
See, I can't tell Ali what I'm laughing about now because she'll just give me that look. She'll say, "What was that? What made you laugh so much?" I say, "Oh, Kieran said follow through." And she'll say, "Two middle-aged, intelligent men. Why do you find that sort of thing funny?" And I'll say, "Because we're middle-aged men." Ha ha ha.
Did I hear you're shopping for a car? Because I've been at it for ages. Ugh, such a time suck, right?
Not really. I bought it on Carvana. Super convenient.
Oh, then comes all the financing, research. Am I right?
Well, you can, but I got pre-qualified for a Carvana auto loan in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, but then all the number crunching and terms, right?
Nope. I saw real numbers as I shopped, found my dream car, and got it in a couple of days.
Wait, like you already have it?
Yep.
Oh.
Go to Carvana.com to finance your car the convenient way.
Eric Schmidt has our final question, and this, Kieran, is a question I'm really looking forward to the answer to because it's one of those questions I love, where it's a simple question, but one that hasn't simply occurred to me. And Eric's question is this: Eric Schmidt's question: are clubs allowed to claim income from documentary-style programs being run about them? So Amazon has produced programs for Spurs and now Newcastle, and FX, of course, has Welcome to Wrexham. Are these clubs benefiting from these programs, and would that money count towards FFP?
The answer is it depends. In the case of Wrexham, the production company, I believe, is that of Reynolds and McElhenney. So therefore, they are generating all the money effectively from that. At the same time, they would have agreed effectively a licensing fee with Wrexham Football Club for the rights. So they might be getting money indirectly. Now, in the case of Spurs and Newcastle, I think what would have happened here is, I think it's Fulwell 23, who are the production company for at least one of those.
It's James Corden's production company.
Okay, great. I won't say anything about James Corden.
No need to. It's unspoken. They understand what we mean.
Yes.
It's fine. Don't have to say it.
So therefore, that would have been a direct sale. That money does count to your PSR calculations because it's deemed to be part of the marketing of the club. And remember, we do have clubs such as Manchester United and Chelsea who have got MUTV and Chelsea TV, which is a subscription model, which again is included because it's directly linked to footballing activities. So therefore, it does count towards the final calculations, and therefore the clubs are benefiting for a variety of ways. A, they're getting free, they're getting publicity, and the clubs may or may not have sort of editorial control or editorial restraints. But if you want to have a Series 2, you've got to make sure that you keep the club on board in Series 1. So the production team do have a vested interest in not making things too controversial. Although, if you take Sunderland Till I Die, for example, they were given free access. And I think it's fair to say some of the executives didn't come out of it too well.
Mm. What about facility fees, Kieran? I've noticed a couple of commercials during the Euros, one of which was obviously Sellers Park, one of which was Loftus Road, with a number of young people doing various keepy-uppy type things, advertising products that are clearly not for me. And I presume both Palace and QPR have been paid quite a lot of money for the grounds to be used for that. Would that income be counted towards FFP? Same as with Ted Lasso and Sellers Park as well. Would that, the income that Palace got for filming there, which I understand wasn't that much, but would that income count towards FFP?
Absolutely so. I mean, remember, we've just had a series of concerts take place over the course of the summer. So Taylor Swift played at Anfield. I was due to see Pearl Jam on Saturday night at Spurs Stadium, but the gig was called off 24 hours before It was due to start, which was not a good day for me, but you've got to take the rough with the smooth, we rock and roll, and so on. So yes, if you are using the club's facilities for commercial activity, and that definition of commercial activity covers a fairly broad brush of what's taking place. Spurs have made money from the NFL, from boxing. They've got the go-kart track underneath the stadium. You can walk over the top of the stadium and so on. All of that is deemed to be commercial stroke marketing income. And on the back of that, it does count towards PSR.
Yeah, when you mentioned series of concerts over the weekend, I thought that was a remarkably old-fashioned way of describing Glastonbury. There's a series of concerts in a field. Why were Pearl Jam called over the old arthritis issue again?
Yeah, that's the trouble with legacy music fans like me. I remember one summer I was due to see Tears for Fears, the Foo Fighters, and a-ha, and all three called off gigs. Which was
I remember.
Not a good one.
That summer flu bug went round, and once that gets into the music community, all those 70s and 80s reunion bands are being cancelled there. I think ABC get it first, and then they spread it. Then the Human League gets it, and then Phil Oakey sneezes, takes out half the bands that you go and see, Kieran. It's a nightmare. Idols at Glastonbury, Kieran. My God, they were good. Oh, wow, fantastic! No, they really
feisty bunch.
Yeah, they're very, very feisty. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you, and it will get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes. And you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on our weekly question show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. If you'd like to buy our book, you can find details at the same place, priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter X, and you can find us on YouTube. We'll be back on Thursday with our weekly news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you, everybody, as always, and thank you for all the questions from fans of Newcastle, Villa, Leicester. If we did this by the 30th of June, and could you give me the right section number of accounting standard FRS 102? Because there's a bloke down the pub that swears that he can't do this. I go, yeah, sure, mate. So my DMs on Twitter have been the cup have been floweth over, shall we say? So that's one way of interacting, and we genuinely appreciate it. So it's so nice that people are still interested in the subject, which nobody by right should be interested in. But there's another way you can support the show, and that's to go onto your app for podcasts, and that's to give us a review. According to producer Guy, the algorithm gives a boost every time we get a review, and that keeps us in the charts, keeps sort of us relevant when it comes to trying to book guests and so on. By all accounts, it doesn't matter what you say in the review. So you could even say you'd rather have the show presented by Bukayo Saka and Eberichi Eze as they do The Price of Being a Left Back, a brand new podcast from the Price of Football stable.
Yeah, from what I can gather, that would be a very laid-back podcast. I love Eze. He's such
a brilliant player.
He's a brilliant player, but not a left-back, Gareth. But he just, from everything I hear about him, he just seems to be the nicest young man as well. Sound like his granny. He's such a nice young man. Which is normally what you say about Wrongan, isn't it? No, I do get to know him. He's all right. He's lovely, Uncle Terry. Once you get to know him. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.
Hi, it's Ali Maxwell from the #1 EFL podcast, Not the Top 20. I want to let you know about the podcast that myself, my pod partner George Ellick, and David Walker of Football Clichés fame are doing this summer, the England Pod. Very much as it says on the tin, we are following, supporting and talking about England all through the Euros with match previews, recaps straight after the final whistle and plenty of predictions. There have already been highs and lows and probably plenty more to come. But we have the conversations that you are having in your group chat down at the pub with your mates, and we are having them on the England pod. So if you're interested in Southgate's tactics or Jude Bellingham's greatness, come and join us over on the Not the Top 20 podcast feed for England's glorious success or catastrophic failure. The England pod. All England, all summer on Not the Top 20 podcast.